Ago, actually went back to academia. Not people make the transition back, but I went back to I went to Southern Utah University to help kick off an analytics degree, and so I have some of my master's students that are actually here today. That's very good that they came, even though they hear way too much of me. I'm also part of Dataform. Dataform is kind of a company, kind of not. It's more of an association of data scientists. And we all know each other. All of us have full-time jobs, but we're kind of a consultancy. We each kind of have our specialties. And when companies have a question, they just go to us and say, what question do you have? And one of us sometimes has the answer for them. It's kind of a fun little association we have. If you're interested, reach out and talk to me. There's about 9 or 10 of us that are involved with it. Like I said, it's a fun thing that we're involved in. So as far as for you, for this audience, the emphasis today is high impact versus low impact data science. And this revolves around this concept within decision science theory, where you'll see as you're working through that project, you're making progress through that project, and you see something go wrong. And we're not able to course correct, and it starts just getting worse and worse and worse. I think that's the majority of us have seen this in our careers, either with ourselves or with our teams. And I want to address the specific question of why the majority of senior managers in a recent survey said that they had not yet seen significant results from their analytics and data science teams. Now, if you had been asked, hey, has there been some significant results, you would say, yeah, we've done all sorts of awesome things. And then you go to senior management and they say, no, we haven't really seen it. So the entire point of this talk is to bridge what I like to call the geeks and jocks divide. Get a little bit closer, and maybe they can't speak geek talk. It's okay. So we need to speak a little bit more jock talk. Okay? So that is what we're trying to do. So we become more highly valued through high impact practices, and on top of this, low impact practices is a major source of job dissatisfaction. And it's something that, if I hate my job, this is not fun, I'm not making an impact. But I can start changing that, and I can start employing high impact practices, and I can start enjoying my job more simply because I'm getting better at it, and I'm having that bigger impact. So what we'll be talking about is the cycle of creating impact, gaining trust, generating more impact, and we're going to go through today some theory, some frameworks, examples, and a case. Yes, you're going to do a case. Of course you're going to do a case. Too much university life for me. So, very first of all, defining the scope. What is the purpose of your analysis? In here, you could say your data science projects kind of loosely fall into two categories. One, it's related to a decision that's going to be made or embedded within a process to change the course of the organization that you're in. The other is that if there's a product that you're trying to develop. So, if the code or the code execution is part of a delivered product to the customer, that's not what we're talking about today. So Google search, Facebook facial recognition, something like that, that's not what we're addressing here. It's not directly customer related. It's that one step back into these decisions. So you improve your decisions. That's what we'll be focusing on primarily today. If you want product, there's lots of other great talks about that from very, very intelligent people. So a couple things on the essentials of decision theory. And this is going to be very basic today. There's going to be no Greek letters on the board. Not even one. Except the ones that look like English letters, of course. So the essentials of decision science is that for a decision to be meaningful, there are 3 things that have to happen. 3. If you don't have these 3, and it has to be all 3, then a decision is not meaningful. It doesn't matter. Okay? One is that you have to have an objective. To simplify this, we would say, what do you want? Second is your actions influence achieving that objective. We call that what can you do to get what you want. And last, you have to have relevant information about your objective, linking what you can do to what you want, and we call that what do you know. So what do you want? What can you do? What do you know? Want, do, know. Okay? So those are the fundamentals of everything that we go over in decision sciences. Kind of all boils down into this. And of course, it's kind of obvious. But when you start viewing these things, these projects that you're working on through this framework, through this lens, things start to pop out. And you start to notice things you weren't really noticing before. So first of all, as far as what do you want, this is surprisingly often the hardest step. It's like, I know what I want. Money. So what is it that you want is actually really hard. And motivating humans, I mean, there's this entire thing called psychology that studies all of this. Why do we do the things we do? And one of the things that boils down to within organizations and within ourselves is stated preferences versus revealed preferences. So you want to win a Nobel Prize, but these Netflix shows aren't going to watch themselves, and so you're not winning a Nobel Prize anytime soon. It's not going to happen. And so we say things, but then we do something else. This happens with you. It happens with your boss. It happens with your team. It happens with your entire companies, with your entire organization. How do you act versus what you do? And there's this constant conflict. It's like, what do I want or what do I want that I want? I want to want things, but I actually don't. And so there's this inherent conflict that we run into, and we're constantly fighting on this. So one of the hardest things to get right in any organization is harmonizing this organization with our employees and our organizational partners. That's what managers are worried about all of the time. What is it that they want, the organization wants versus the team? How do I align this? This is what they're sweating about at night. Because all this fighting and how do we actually get to where we want to be? So what does your organization want? Very good question. What does your boss want? And then finally we get to this point of what do you want? So think about it for a second. What does your organization want? What does your boss want? What do you want? So now I have leftover Halloween candy, and I would really like for someone, if they could do this in 20 seconds or less, go through what your organization wants, what your boss wants, and what do you want as part of your work. Hopefully your boss isn't here. It's okay. So who would be brave enough to, if you could say in 20 seconds or less and say very quickly, what does your organization want? What does your boss want? What do you want out of your work?
So what my organization wants is to know what to develop, what the users want to use. I do crafting. I work for Cricut. The boss wants to know where he wants to spend his technical dollars. The organization wants to know how to make more money. And what do I want? I want to predict. I want to do the data science.
You're going to do it for free out of the love of your heart, right?
Exactly.
Yes, awesome. Give that man a raise. Yeah.
I would say that the organization wants money. They always have, they always will, and they're public, so they'll always be wanting that, a return. And my boss has told me he'd like to increase the data-centric culture, and so he wants us to make better decisions. And then what I want is to make an impact.
Awesome. So one of my follow-up questions, yeah, one more. Let's go for it.
I thought mine was cool. Anyway.
Yeah. I do too.
University wants a reputation. My PI wants publications, and I want a degree.
Fantastic. Let me, hopefully this doesn't hit anyone besides you. Awesome. So there's this constant conflict, this constant potential conflict between these, because also your boss says that they want this, but then by their actions, sometimes they want other things. And it's you said you wanted data-centric whatever, but then you just told me to do something else that has nothing to do with that. What's going on? And so we have this conflict that's just kind of bubbling up all of the time between the organization, ourselves, and our boss. So this example of missing want is when you can influence it, I know about it, but I just don't care. And sometimes it's true for us. Sometimes it's true for like our organization in general. They say they want this, but it doesn't seem like they really care. Sometimes my boss just doesn't really care about that. And I'm like, oh, okay, I guess. That's nice. And sometimes those are the moments when we can feel down and it's like, well, they just don't seem to care, so what can I do? And so the point of this is getting beyond, okay, how can I align what I want with the organization and start working together? Second is like, what can you do? And that's basically, can you influence the outcome? And when I mean you, I mean whatever form of you that decision is taking place. It could be you individually, it could be your organization, it could be your team, it could be your boss. Can you actually change that outcome? So how many times have you taken this project on where you didn't have the entire skill set to complete the project? Everybody, right? We've all done that. We know what we're doing, we promise. So sometimes the answer is simply to expand your skill set, but sometimes it's outside of our skill set. We can't influence it. So is what we can do connected to what we want? And then how connected is that? Do I have a lot of control over this outcome or just a little bit of control? And so if I make a model to predict something, what can we do with that prediction to achieve what our organization wants? And there's a part of you that's like, well, that's not my job. And then we just kind of spiral around into these low impact practices. It's thinking of this bigger picture of bridging this geeks and jocks divide. By thinking of this bigger picture, we can get to this point where we can connect this and examine how connected it is. So there's lots of examples of missing do that I've seen, at least in my career, of projects that I've worked on. But one of the main ones that I wanted to point to is, do we have the resources and capabilities to actually pull this off? Really cool project that I worked on once was with stealth pricing. Has anyone ever heard of stealth pricing? It's when you change your prices and then you change them back before a competitor sees that you changed prices. So it's a way of basically stealing market share without them knowing. And so spent a bunch of time on this project, really, really cool. And it was like, oh, like our pricing system can't update prices that quickly. We just spent like 900 man hours on this project, and it's impossible? What? And now you could say like, oh, that's big boss's problem, except then we spiral around and they say, well, analytics hasn't really pulled off anything of importance. And so this is kind of the serenity prayer, which we could repeat to ourselves sometimes, to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Repeat over and over. We can do this, we can make it through. But really, if we can't expand our skill set, we need to pinpoint what is it that we can actually move the needle on and what's actually going to change. So last is, what do you know? You need to have the right information to tie this outcome, to what you want, to what you do. Now, you guys know math. You're here. Like f of x. You have your inputs, you have your arguments, what you control, and your output is like what you get out of this. So in order to make that bridge, it's like, do you have the data? It's like, well, we have lots of data. Well, do you have the data to actually answer the question at hand? And is the data related to the goal? Is the data clean enough? These are all questions that you're aware of and that you know, but is the data clean enough to get us actually to the end goal? To get to that project that, say, your CEO has in mind. It's like, oh, this is exactly what I'm imagining, and then what you deliver isn't quite there because the data's just not clean enough. It's just not going to happen. And so having this on in the background of, what is it that we want, what is it that we can do, what is it that we know, and because of this, once this is running in the background, you can start making some really good recommendations. Some of the best recommendations I've made in my career was in regards to small changes to improve data collection. It's like, well, we want to do X. And it's like, okay, we could build this model. Like, oh, hey, by the way, you could change this little thing and this would be dramatically better, by the way. Like, oh, cool. We can improve what we know. One of my favorite examples is this customer satisfaction. It's related to data format. I have a friend of mine who was working on this project, and basically they said, our customer satisfaction is sky high. And our customers are calling and complaining. And we don't really know what's going on. And so he goes in there and goes through all the customer satisfaction information. What's going on? Why is this happening? And starts walking through this over and over and over and is trying to pinpoint the problem. And then he goes back and says, wait, when do you collect this data? It's like, oh, that's when they order the product, is when we get customer satisfaction data. It's like, what? That's when you're collecting the data. This isn't customer satisfaction data. This is, did my order go through? This is something entirely different. And so by shifting when that occurred, by mapping out, here's the process, here's where we're collecting data all along the way, mapping all of that out, that's the real thing. That was the real project that they needed. He delivered something totally different than they asked for, and they were very, very happy with the entire process. So just something to keep in mind. So in context, walking through some of these, so decision-focused data analysis. So good analytics and data science projects lead to a change in meaningful decisions that create and capture value for the organization. This is blah, 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 blah. Yeah, so they're going on about this, but this is what's going on over in Jockland, okay? So in order to do this, you need to fulfill all three foundations: want, do, know. Is this really truly what they want? By their revealed preference, not just what they say, is this what they can do? Can they take the output and actually capture value? Do we actually have the information? Do we know? So decision-focused data analysis should be decision-focused. Also, tautologies should be tautological. Yeah, that's kind of, yes, it's a tautology. But one of the ways that you can think of any project that you do, you say, as a result of this analysis, what decision will be made differently? How much value is created and captured from this improved decision? And one thing to always keep in mind that I always would have to remind people who worked with me on projects was interesting may only loosely be correlated with valuable. This is so cool and so interesting. Yeah, that's we can't do anything with it, but it's real cool. And that constant battle, and that's that battle with ourselves. Like, I want to create value. I also want to do interesting things that entertain me. So which one of those should I be focused on? So this is this thing to keep in the back of our minds. Decision-focused data analysis should be decision-focused. And this first kind of big takeaway is good analysis changes decisions. So the output of this data, this analysis, the recommendation engine, whatever it happens to be, as a result of this project, it will output blah. And because of that, we are going to what? And if you can't finish that sentence, this is not a project we should be doing. This is when we say we push back and we say, I don't think this is the best value of our team's time, of our energy, of what we should be focusing on. And here are some other potential options. So there's some obvious bad examples of this. So say political cover. The company's already decided what they want to do, or your boss has already decided, do an analysis to confirm what I'm already going to do. And it's like, that's, sometimes you just get stuck in those ones. I have. You only have so much control. Some of these are security blankets. So there are certain reports, you go to, especially large organizations, you go to a large organization and there's reports everywhere. And if you just like made one of them disappear, those reports, it's just, no one's gonna notice. It was this little security blanket report that they would tuck themselves in at night as if it's going to be useful, or a dashboard, or a predictive model predicts this really, really cool thing, but nobody's using that prediction for anything. It's this security blanket makes people feel better. Kind of loosely related to that is job security. So how do you test if an analysis is decision focused? Is that you need to pre-test it. So imagine that there's, so a little bit of math speak, 3 mutually exclusive, collectively exhaustive outputs from a model. You build a model, and the model either screams A, B, or C at you. A good, loud voice. And you say, okay, is this going to be able to change decisions? And you just say, okay, if the model says A, I will do X. If the model says B, I will do Y. And if the model says C, I will do Z. There are a lot of situations where I've sat down with, say, a company, with a client, with my old private sector job, where I sit down and say, if the model says A, what do you do? They say X. Okay, what if the model says B, what do you do? X. If the model says C, what do you do? X. It's like, now of course, the conversation's not that short, but if you shortened it, that's exactly what it sounds like. And you're like, I don't think this is a useful model. But it's really cool, it's true. But if the model says this, what will you do differently? Because this is actually how you will define the value of the model. Because if you take action Y instead of action X, what is the value? What is the difference between taking action with no information and with the model's information? That difference in scenario is the value of your analysis. That's what's driving what you're doing. So pre-testing results in better models and outputs. It's not just identifying just bad things in general. But if you say, if the model says B, what are you going to do? And they say, I don't know. I say, that's a very good question that we need to walk down. And so by pre-testing the model, one is that we can build better models because we know how it's going to be used. And second, we can abandon projects that aren't going to make an impact, that aren't going to make a difference. So good analysis captures value is kind of the second point. So how much value is created and captured from this improved decision? So we've decided, okay, we're going to do something differently. It's not just we do the same thing every time. We're going to create value. Well, how much value is actually created out of this? So value creation, just to define a few points, provides benefits to the customer, or it can reduce costs, just value created in general. But value captured benefits the organization directly. So how could you create value without capturing any? Well, my employer could pay me to just develop really cool things that I post on GitHub that are open source, and I don't do anything else. So maybe I could create value that way, but my organization isn't benefiting at all from that. So they need to capture some of that value. So as far as the value map, this is the thing to keep in mind, which is that the value captured from your improved decision. So imagine you take a decision with no information whatsoever. That is the baseline scenario. Now you run your model. Now what do we do differently? There's two different worlds, universes that we have. One with the model, one without the model. What is that difference in value? So the value captured from the improved decision is that difference in two universes. You have the value captured without the analysis, so you have that difference. And then there's the cost of the analysis itself, which can be very costly at times. And that's the net value of this data analysis. So this is jock speak. Okay? This is how they are approaching this situation. It's like, here is baseline, here is improved scenario, here's the difference between the two, here's net value, plus we take out whatever we pay you and my time and all of that. So the cost versus the benefits. Data science can be very expensive, but not in the ways that most people think. Yeah, there's direct costs, salary, benefits, there's systems, processes, there's software, there's all of those things associated with it. But a big part of this is administrative time. So if a senior manager spends 30% of their time working with you on this project, they could have been spending that time doing something else. This is one of the most heavily counted times that most of us don't really recognize. How much time is being spent on this project? This is consuming them and it's taking them in different directions. So the benefits of this can be enormous, but also the costs can be large as well. So taking both of those into account and being cognizant of administrative time, because we frequently undercount those. So as far as the benefits, you can think of benefits as, well, this could be a perpetual or a long-term benefit, or it can be a situation where it can just be something big. So if we're going to acquire a company, maybe we should, run a few numbers first before we spend $1 billion. Or is this something that's going to occur over and over and over? And so this total benefits or impact, what you can think of is frequency times value formula. And we'll walk through that. So if it's not perpetual, or if it's not big, let's do one of those two instead. So this is kind of this next level. In order to generate this value, it needs to be big. It needs to be one of these two. So impact is this value times frequency. Very basic framework here. And so what do? High value, high frequency. Startups are in this realm a lot. They're basically betting the company with big decisions all the time. And if they make a bad move, it could sink the entire company. Now, that's usually not most of us most of the time, hopefully. If so, good. If that's you, good luck. We believe in you. But extreme caution there. But the rest of our time is focusing on the greens. We need to find things that are high frequency, even if they're low value. If I could save 5 seconds off the picking order time of every Amazon order, that would be hugely valuable to Amazon. It's 5 seconds, but yeah. High value, low frequency. Should we buy this company or not? We're going to spend $1 billion or $4 billion to do it. We should probably look at this. So one of the main takeaways is that this is a model walking around in senior management's head. So recognizing early and checking often, if something starts, basically every project starts farther toward that quadrant, and over the course of the project it slowly drifts down into the lower left quadrant as it falls in value. As we find out more things, certain things we can do, certain things are not we're able to do. So it devolves down, and we have to consider this feasibility. Feasibility is very hard to know without pursuing it first, but we can get a general idea. So third, is feasibility. Feasibility, if we get 98% of the way there, if you cross the ocean and get 98% of the way there and then jump off the boat, you die, right? Same thing with feasibility. Optimism bias encouraged this selection. I don't know what I did with my PowerPoint slides today. They are taken off on their own. But the optimism bias encourages to select projects with low feasibility, where normally it's like, that's a long shot, but is this something that we could actually pull off? And then also sunk cost encourages us to walk through all of this and say, you know what? We've been pursuing this project for what, 9 months, 10 months? It's gonna work this time, I promise. This is my big chance. So we stick with a project that's failing much longer than we should because of these biases that we have. So the appropriate amount of feasibility of a project is all going to depend on the situation that you're in. Do you need a sure win, or can you swing for the fences? And that's going to depend largely on the situation that you find yourself in. So this is going to be quick activity. Yeah, activities. So this is your organization, and you're assessing some different projects based off of feasibility and impact. And your job, if you have a pencil, write it down, for your organization, not generic organization, wherever you work for currently or most recently, for your organization, which of these projects would you select to pursue? I'll give you a minute to think through that. For your organization. So what would be your number 1? What would be your number 2? And what would be your number 3? In which order? Which one is highest priority for your organization versus second versus third? So think about it for a minute.
Is feasibility related to cost?
Can you pull it off? Can you get to the finish line? If it's a high cost project, your company pulls the cord before you get there because of cost, let's say. We don't get there. But impact has cost as a part of it already. So if we're able to pull it off. Yeah.
I think mine would be a 14.
Yes.
And the building was burned to the ground.
Yes. Positive impact. Yeah.
So you're asking us because our company culture may be very different.
Yes.
That's why you're asking.
All right.
For your organization, which of these projects do you pursue? So, how many people are thinking 13? Awesome. 10. Okay. 14. Yeah, those are the ones that like, I just have to deliver something that works.
I raised my hand for 14.
And it's like a number 2 and a number 3, potentially 15 as well. Yeah.
I was going to point out, if you can pull it off the first time, your bosses will be much more likely to let you take a risk the second.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is why it depends on your
Reputation.
organization, right? So if you've generated a lot of successive wins already, you can take on 13. That's fine. And if you lose one, that's okay. That's fine. And they're used to seeing that. If you have never really delivered, if your team has never really delivered a huge win that they can see, that they can perceive, that I can use this, I can build off of this, 14 is the clear winner for your organization. And I notice in here, most people raise their hand for 14, showing a little bit about the level of maturity within that organization. That's not bad. That's just showing kind of where you are in that progress within your organization. So this is just the thing to keep in mind. Which one do you choose? That depends on your organization. It depends on where you are at within that development. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later on. So success leads to success is where we're going with this. So once we start generating wins, we can get more resources and start building off of this. And your organization, they probably need this digital foundation in order to survive going forward. Like an organization today with like no analytics skills and no data science skills, like 30 years from now, will they be around? Probably not, but there's a chance. Telling me there's a chance. Okay. So your organization likely needs a digital foundation to survive in the future. So this isn't just about you making an impact or looking good. Your organization depends on you generating these wins, getting more resources, generating more wins, going and going and going. Your organization's survival depends on your ability to do this. Now, your organization might not recognize that this is what needs to happen, but this is basically what's happening. So success builds upon trust, which leads to more resources, leads to more opportunities, and eventually the goal is to get embedded within the strategy of the organization. What strategy should we select? Well, we need to take this aspect of analytics into account. And so this constant concept of we're not looping, we're iterating, right? We're not doing the same thing over and over, we're iterating and improving. And once we do that, we can propel our organization to a different level than it is today.